Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today we'll masech this Kiddushin daf Nun Ches. We are going to begin on Nun Ches Amud Aleph, about 8 lines from the top. Ashkechinhu Mar Yehuda, Rav Yosef Rav Shmuel Berei, the Rabba Bar Rav Chana. So Mar Yehuda found these two great sages, the Havi Kaime Epischa de Be Rabba, that they were in the proximity of the entranceway of the Bei Rabbah, of the Beis Medrash, Armulhu. So as we now painted this picture of exactly who we're talking about, where they were, Tanya, he said the following to them: a mekanish bepeter chamor. If a person is mekanish a woman with peter chamor, as we were discussing in the Mishnah, or for that matter, if a person is mekanish bebas b'cholav, right? He gives her a cheeseburger. Marry me on condition with this delicious cheeseburger. Or if a person brought chulin into the Beis HaMikdash, in which all these things apparently we mentioned were asur b'hana, and our mission therefore is not a good Kiddushin, unbelievably, Rav Shimon Omer mikudashas. Pretty amazing that Rav Shimon is of the opinion that it actually is a good Kiddushin. And the question is, how is that shaykh? So let's go straight into Rashi before we see anything else. So Rashi says, as long as it's alive before it's killed, so at that time it's considered to be still mutar b'hana. So that explains Petach Hamor. Bas b'cholav, Rav Shimon tamid yamil el mutar b'hana. Rav Shimon holds bas b'cholav, it's actually machlokus, we pass, and it's asur b'hana, asur iser achila, bishul, and hana. But he holds it's mutar b'hana, and then chun shenishchatu ba'azara. So that is the question. Why would he say that? So let's go for a second, back in the Gemara. Alma chun shenishchatu ba'azara, Rav Shimon lab deraisa. It must be that he holds it's not a din deraisa, because if it was the din deraisa, you cannot be mekanish woman with it. So let's look at Rashi. Therefore, instead, elam rabbanon. It must be only the rabbanon, says Rashi. Dilma astil meimer kadashim shenifsul achar shchita hein shlo nizrak damon. So if a person would have kadshim, which is puzzle, after the shchita, shlo nizrak damon, that one would not sprinkle its blood. V'kamis hani minayu, person would get hana from it. Yasili hana is mikachim shlo nizrak damon, and you end up getting hana from an animal in which the zrika was not done. So there's this interesting gezerah that potentially is the reason why it's asur, but midorais it's okay. Therefore, meikar adin, if you're mekadosh a woman with it, will be good. Even though Kol Mekadosh is at the Rabban Mekadosh, which is certainly something to think about, but nonetheless, make our din midorais, it works, and therefore it would be a good Kiddushin. Okay. Fine, and it seems like Taisus is kasha up here. Ve'im taimer hamash me'ika yisur Rabbanon, right? It's why is it mutter if it's an isur Rabbanon, right? L'chayr wouldn't work. Just like we find in the beginning of Masechtas Pesachim, which we saw not too long in Mekadosh, Mevav Shois L'mala. If you're Mekadosh woman with chametz on Erev Pesach, V'afil Bechiti Kardan Yasa De'enu Asur Ne'elman Rabbanon Ne'enu Chayshel Kiddushin. So the question is, why? So over here, Rashi says, Taisus rather says, Avahacha Leika El Isur Rabbanon. Okay. All right. Okay, so Ayin Taisus. But anyway, it's a good kasha to think about. But anyway, Rav Shimon says that chulin shenishchatu ba'azar is not deraisa. That's what we're saying now. Is that true? Or minhu, fact the Gemara, Rav Shimon Omer, chulin shenishchatu ba'azar yisrafu. That you have chulin shenishchatu ba'azara, supposed to burn it. V'chein chaya, so too a wild animal. Rashi. Those sagil b'kvura. You can't bury it, rather it has to be burned. Alma says Rashi, Sumin Atayra. It has to be an Issa Deraisa. Diyam Rabbanan, Mi Machmirin Kuli Hai. Why would it be so strict when it comes to this, that we would have it burned. Must be. So again, this is the kasha. A chaya, says Rashi, ikar iser dida lav diraisa, again, lama hiba sreifa. Skipping a few lines of the Rashi. Why would we think that you'd have to burn it if it's only din d'Rabbanan? Okay. So therefore, that's the kasha. L'chayr Rav Shimon must hold its diraisa. So ishtiku, so they were silent because it was a good kasha. Let's come to Rabbi. Lahu palga okim nichi, that actually he partially tricked you. Palga, Rashi says, actually not half, but kantargan, someone who is a provoker. Rogel chalika chaverov. So this provoker has tricked you. This is actually the Gilyon on the side brings down other places where this lashon of palga is someone who causes division. This is actually a specific situation where Rav Shimon says it's a good Kiddushin. It's talking about a situation where it was found to be a treifa, and that's the whole issue. So what? Rav Shimon Tamed Yamar Hashaykhet as a treifa, Yishacht a treifa. The chen shaykhah nimsa treifa, or Yishacht turns out to be a treifa. Zev zeh chulun ba'azara. So according to the Shita, the Tanakama, it's still considered chulun shenichlam ba'azara. Rav Shimon matim hana v'chamim oisin. So even though it was brought in, if talking about the case was chulun ba'azara, chulun shenichlam ba'azara, but it turned out to be a treifa, Rav Shimon says it's mutar b'hana, and therefore that's the case. Specifically, where it's allowed is where it was found to be a treifa. All right, let's look at Rashi. The only time Rav Shimon says Mekudeshes, which is question 1, how do we find that he holds it's a din Kiddushin when it comes to Chol Shenichlam B'Azara? It's Dafka, answer number 1, as we see in Rashi, Shenims is Treifa. It's not to be a Shimon. Rav Shimon says it's, when it comes to a Treifa, it's going to be a few lines. It's brought down Baba Kama. Shchita Sheneruya Lachilo L'Shmei Shchita. Even if you shecht it, but if you can't eat it, it's not considered to be a shchita. The whole purpose of the shchita is so you can be fit to eat. But if you can't eat it, so it's not a shchita. So what's the whole isser of chulun shenishchatu ba'azara? That you shechted it in the azara. But if it's not considered to be a shem shchita, so you didn't technically do anything to have violated all the therefore laws that pertain to chulun shenishchatu ba'azara. Hilkach, says Rashi, therefore, Isser Chulun Halol Alidi Shchita Ba'alav Shchitahi. So therefore, there's no Isser Hana. Obviously, you can't eat it because it's a treifa, but it's mutar b'hana. So that's the pshat why you can be mekanish a woman with. Can you imagine the nice guy? He gives a woman Chulun Shenishchat B'Azara. Don't worry, it's a treifa. Okay. So therefore, because it's mutar b'hana, according to Rav Shimon, that's why it's a good Kiddushin. Okay. Okay, weiter. So, going back to our Mishnah, which talks about all the different cases which are Isser Bahana, it's obviously not a good Kiddushin because you're not giving her anything of any real value. But if you would sell this item and you would be Mekadosh with the money, then it would be a good Kiddushin, which means that the Isser doesn't go onto the money. The Isser stays. The person bought it. Maybe you wonder why that's not a Mekach Tos. It's a good question on itself. But that money, that Isser money, the Isser doesn't transfer onto the money. To Menolan, because we see this when it comes to the dinim of Avodas Kachavim, when it comes to idol worship, in which this is going to eventually be TB 26. The question is, Elu beis isurim toisin estimeim bein isharim beisurin. In which two situations, we're going to see one right now, where a person could transfer the isser onto the money, but the item itself still says usser. First, one of the answers we're going to see is idol worship. So what do we see? It says beferish that it will be just like it. Kol shiata mihayeh himena harahu kamahu. Any whatever gets out of it will be just like it itself. So mechlal, we can deduce that it's only when it comes to avodah zarah that if you sell avodah zarah, that money is still usher and the avodah zarah remains usher, which is mashma mechal dechol hisun shematara sharu. When it comes to anything else, it's mutter. Namely, that money is not bad money, which is an interesting question. Like, is a person able to take bad money, right? Which someone earned it in a bad way. So it's an interesting possible connection. So v'nelch minei. So when we learn, why don't we learn out from avodah zarah that just like avodah zarah, the money is still usher, if you will. So too, why do we say there? Therefore, all the other cases no. Why don't we learn as a mamatzinu? We have this binyan of to be able to say mamatzinu, just like we find by avodah zarah, so too kol torah. Here's the answer. Not only is it by avodah zarah, but also by shmita. So we already established that when you transfer onto money, the money is aser, but also, of course, the avodah zarah. It's also when it comes to shmita. Shvius, what does this have to do with? What do we see this? Mahi. So Yovel he kaddish dielachem. This is Gemara in Sukkah as well. So it says that on the Yovel year, it's going to be kaddish. So ma kaddish teifes es damav av shvius teifes es dameha. So we see that just like when it comes to the din of kaddish, the din is that if you would transfer the kedusha onto it, it's teifes es damav, that the money becomes kadosh, right? So too, when it comes to the shvius, that if you sell it, so that money also takes upon itself that. So if you want to compare it to when you're paid a hektish, ma kadosh teifes is dam v'yotzel chulin, shvius teifes is dam v'yotzel chulin. So in that case, we should say that the original item is still good, is now good, I should say. Talmud loimer tiyeh b'v'yoset tehei. So similar language when it came to avodas kachavim, that in that situation, no, it retains its status. Ketzad, this is verbatim, the Gemara in Sukkah and Daf Mem. What exactly does this mean? So it's like this: Lokach beperis shvius baser. Let's say you purchased with the peris shvius, you bought meat. Ilu be'ilu misbarim b'shvius. Both of them need to be destroyed by the Shemitah year, which means they both take upon itself Kedusha Shvius. And we don't say that the Kedusha was transferred onto the meat, yes, but the original thing is now not Kedusha Shvius. No, that also is. But Basar Dagim, Yatsu Basar Nichnasu Dagim. But Dagim Yayin, Yatsu Dagim V'Nichnas Yayin. But Yayin Shemen, Yatsu Yayin V'Nichnas Shemen. So HaKetzad, what do we see in all these cases? Achron Nitvas. The very last time, if you transfer from A to B, B to C, C to D, D to E, okay, that's basically what the Gemara just said. So E is kadosh, D, C, and B lose its kedusha, similar to when with hektish. However, peri atzma aser, but the pasuk is telling you that the original things becomes aser. So it's not exactly. I'm not sure if this is it doesn't say this by avodas kachavim. If you would continue to do transfers, would maybe not be the same thing. Maybe it would continue to be usher. But when it comes to shvius, the beginning and the end are usher. Anything, all the transactions in between become mutter. So you can still take these two and make a mamatzinu and say just like these two, so too everything else, the din should be the same. No, miyutik sivi. We have miyutim. The psukim are excluding everything else because this is unique. Ksiv hacha ki cherem hu. Ksiv hasam yovel he. He in midachrina lo. The fact that it says these languages is saying that it's explicit and specific to these two cases, and it doesn't matter. So either you can't learn it to kol Torah kula because shniksum ein malamdin. Even though malamdin, the psukim are exact. So the question is, of course, you could ask the Shiloh, so v'shtinksum in ke'echad ein malamdin, then why do you need these extra words of who and he? Okay. Let's see the next Mishnah. Says the Masnis. Hamikadesh b'trumos u'maisrus. Okay. This guy wants to be Mekadesh a woman with Truma and with Meiser. This is going to be TA 25. So you're Mekadesh a woman, you give her Truma, you give her Meiser, Umatanais, or you give her gifts. Doesn't mean regular gifts. It means Rashi says Zrov V'chaim Keva, or as Rabbi Gibber, my Rebbe in Miami, once said, the maw, the paw, and the jaw. These are the different matnois kahuna. Umechatos. This guy's a real interesting guy. He gives her mechatos, the ingredients for the carbon for doing the chatos for the paraduma. A for chatos, or the ashes therein. Harzim kadeshas. The Avil Yisrael. It's actually good Kiddushin. Can you imagine that? Says Rashi. Avil Yisrael. Well, Yisrael can't use it. So why would this be a good Kiddushin? What benefit does she have from it? Says Rashi, because all you can do is give it to someone else, give it to a Kohen. Now, you're not supposed to charge the Kohen, but the idea is I can choose which Kohen I want to give it to. I can give it to this Kohen, that Kohen, and that Kohen. That's called Tovas Hana. So there is an element of Hana, because that Kohen will now say, wow, this person likes me. I like this guy too, right? Or it could be beneficial in other ways we can think of. But the point is that there is an element of Hana by giving it. That's at least in the Havamim as Rashi brings down. So let's see the Gemara. Amar Ula. Tovas Hana in a moment. So you say, no, Tovas Hana, it doesn't have any monetary value. You cannot make Kaddish a woman with it that way. So the problem is our Mishnah, right? Eis v'Rebbe Abba. So what are you talking about? How can you possibly say that it's not a good Kiddushin, that you can't be a Mekadesh woman with Tovas Hana? We see clearly it could work, which is going to be question 2, and also question TA 25. Madua Mekadeshes be Yisrael. So one answer, Pasha, could be because Tovas Hana is Mamay. Right? Or the following answer. Again, this is the exact same question. This is TA 25. Let me just mark it down as we go through the second answer. No, even if Tovas Hana enu mamoin, so how do we understand our Mishnah? We're talking about a case where Yisrael, where Tevel, non-tithe foods, were given from his mother's father's house. Now, his father was not a Kohen, so he's not a Kohen. But his mother's father is a Kohen. So his grandmother is born into a Kohen family. So it doesn't make him a Kohen. He can't use it. But his grandmother inherited all this stuff. Or his grandmother had it, and now he has inherited this stuff. Now, he inherited this Tevel. We say that when it comes to him giving this, we say that matanos, which have not yet been separated, it's as though it's been separated. So it was already separated, and it was given to the grandfather, so now this Yisrael was Yerushet. That's the idea. That it was already considered like it was separated. Look at Rashi. Hoyel ba'omedes litroim. Since all you need to do is just the last act of actually doing the truma, says Rashi, v'nigmar malachta elokach v'zacha koyin b'chayev. So his grandfather was already zoiche the truma, shelo huto alav. Af yorish zeh yafrishena. So now he could separate it. V'im charena lekohanim and sell it to a koyin. V'chein he tim charena, and so too she could sell it. In other words, since it was already given to a Kohen, right? So there, it was already given, the father already had it, so now obviously you can't eat it because it's still truma and all this stuff, but because you now own it, because it was already separated, even though it was Tevel, but it's Kimi Shehormia Damian, so therefore because it was as though it was separated, therefore now you have the right to be able to sell it. Let's see what 25 is. Okay. So in this, the Gemara, I think, parrots this a few times. Bar Abin Rav Huna. Is Tavasana anything? Is it money or not? Amalei Tinisua. What do you mean? We're in a Mishnah. Clearly it is. Because I'm a Kaddish for Chumas Hamaisa Matanas B'mei for Para. Paras B'kadesh for Israel. So it's a riot that Tavasana is Mammon. Amalei no, V'lav Okinna. Didn't we not establish? Maybe Tavasana is not Mammon. So how come it works over there? It's because we Yisrael Shanafal Tavalim Beis Avi Imukayin. That we're talking about that specific situation where, and we again hold as we continue to Nun Chesed Beis that Tovos Hana that Matana Shul Hormer is Kamisha Hermian. Our Malay, the more answers Hotza At says, what does that mean? It says Rashi, like go out, get out of here. Now Ichsif, he felt bad. Who's Sover? Mishmait the Karmelite. Maybe he was thinking regarding the sugya. Says Rashi, Moitzaat mishmozu. Get out of this conversation. Says Rashi, she'enat chacham. But you're not knowledgeable to be able to have such conversation. Inami kotel kanei ba'agma at loshen chutza v'dafna. Chutza v'dafna have these like branches that we would stick in to make it into a kosher wall for a sukkah. So it's like maybe you're like a wood chopper. Like who are you? She was embarrassed that he said that. I'm like, no, Haki Kamina, Rav Asi the Hutzel Koi Kavasich. Rav Asi the Hutzel is the one who says just like you. So fine. So in other words, that it's you shouldn't feel. I didn't mean to insult you. That was certainly not my. That was not my intention at all. But I'm just saying that. Someone from Hutzel, Hotzaat, you are saying similar to the person in Hutzel. So therefore it's good. Hutzel koi kavasech. So nema katanoi. Again, it's going to be similar to what we just said before. Let's say this whole notion is machlokas tanoim, whether tavasana is moment or not. Hagayniv tivloi shel chavero. A person steals tevel from you. So you didn't take off the trumas and maestros yet. So the question is, how much does this person have to return? Mishalmo demei tivloi shel chavero. Rabbi, you have to return the tevel, says Rashi. Af demei trumu meiser shabo. So if you stole 100 pounds of wheat, so you have to return 100 pounds of wheat. We don't say, oh yeah, well, you know what, maybe half of this isn't yours because half of it goes to trumas and meisers. No, you have to return it all. Rabbi Yosef Yehuda Eimer Ena Mishalom El demei chulin shaboy. So my law b'hakamifli demar sabatovas hana mamon. And therefore, you have to return the whole thing. And therefore, what's the difference? I'll just give you back everything but. Look, the kul yalma tavasana enamama. Really, it's not money. So if it's enamamoin, so then why do you have to give the whole thing back? There's this specific case where he was yarish this from his grandmother, who was kayin. So the question is, since Tevel was not yet separated from it, do we say it's Kihulik who was already separated and that the grandfather was already Yorish and therefore he has the rights to it now? Mar Savar Kamisha Hermidamian, Mar Savar Lav Kamisha Hermidamian. So again, if the grandfather was Yorish it, so even though it wasn't separated, it's Kihulik was separated, so therefore you're inheriting his matanos. Again, you can't use them, but you could sell them. So again, that's a second possibility. That really, it's like it's already separated. But Tovasana in a mammon, and Tovasana is not money. So if it's not money, why do you have to return the whole thing again? So v'hacha b'deshmul kimifli. The Shmuel chita achas poiteres esakri. That when it comes to the dinim of truma, all you need to do, because the Torah does not specify exactly how much a person is supposed to separate, so therefore it's possible all you need to do is separate one little kernel, and that would suffice. Damar is Shmuel, Mar Shmuel. So basically, outside of one tiny little piece, you basically have to return the whole thing because you could fulfill the obligation of the separation of certain parts of your chiyuvim in a very minimal way, and therefore everything has to be returned, or maybe not. That no, you have to actually separate the proper amounts. The Rabbi, why does Rabbi say that when someone steals your tevel, it's necessary, according to Rabbi, to return the entire thing back? So the kansuhu rabbanim leganav. We kanas the ganav. Why should we make the ganav return less than he stole? No, we're gonna not make it easy for him. We're gonna have to make him return everything that he stole. That's the question. Or do we kanas the ganav? Everyone holds you can just separate the smallest amount. So therefore, what's the problem? Maybe the whole idea is maybe we're going to kanas the Baal Bayis. What did he do wrong? So he actually did something wrong on his own, because he should not have delayed in keeping it tevel. You should not keep tevel just lying around. It could be asla de tekala. Something bad could happen. Someone may end up eating it and not knowing that trumas and maisos have not yet been separated. So therefore, the fact that he had his tevel, so maybe that's why we're going to punish him and say, you're not able to get it back. And it's the exact same way. Even if maybe Tovasano is Mamain, doesn't make any difference. Tanat. So we're now going to focus on these two cases, mechatas and efer para, which has to do with to purify a person who's tameh. Harizuma kedeshas. So we said it's a good Kiddushin if you give this woman these things. The afal pi Yisrael, and even if it is Yisrael, or in the Girsa it says vafilu, which is the lashon of the Mishnah, so probably it should say vafilu. I'm not sure if it's a huge difference, but nonetheless that's the correct Girsa l'chayra. Or minhu frektigamar hanaitel sachar ladun. If a person is taking reward for being a judge, dina b'talin, it's not a good court case. You can't do that. You can't take money to be a judge. That's the din. And if you do, then it's batal. We don't want such a person because if he's engaged in taking money, we're concerned of the ability to be able to be an effective judge, because maybe this person will take shaychad, maybe he takes bribes, etc. Lahayid, let's say you pay someone as a witness, edus b'teila. It's not a good edus. Lahazais, you pay someone to do the sprinkling of the avoda, ulakadish meima, or to sanctify its waters. Meimara, or ulakadish, meima meimara, its waters is like cave water. The afro afer makle, and the ashes is like ashes in like a stove. It's Rashi says komer stam afer shabam in hakoli be'esh, just like something burnt up. It has no meaning. It's very interesting. It could look like the mechatas and everything, but if it was done in the wrong way, then it's not good. So what's the problem? The question is, how are you able to give her these things? They have no value because you can't sell them. You can't do anything with it because you're not allowed to charge money for any of these things. So then why would it be a good Kiddushin? So Rabbi Lukasha. Kan b'schar haba umiloi, kan b'schar hazav kiddush. There's a difference. One is the reward of bringing it and filling it up, and the other one is the actual sprinkling and sanctifying. So look at Rashi. B'schar haba ha'efer memakom memakom. Actually, the physical transporting it from one place to the next. B'schar miloi amayim, or filling up the water. Demilsa de tirchahi. This is something which is of great difficulty. V'rachmanu ram yolehe b'shari lemishkol agra umukadeshus. So for that, it would be a good Kiddushin, because you are allowed to receive money for that. Umasnisin de b'chayros, when it said that all these things don't work in Masechtas B'charos, is b'schar hazav kiddush, where all you're doing is sprinkling or sanctifying it. Doleka tircha. There's no tircha. Uschar limud mitzvah hu noitel v'torah amra re'elo manti eschem, etc. It says mani b'chinam atem b'chinam. You're not allowed to charge for doing the mitzvahs. You can't charge someone for doing providing a service, which is a mitzvah. So, but our mission is not talking about the actual service. We're talking about the transporting it and gathering the water, which there's a tircha, and for that you could use and you can receive money for it. The economy, and if you listen to the languages of these two cases, it proves that this is not just some random answer. The tani hacha, it says over here, b'mechatus be'efer par, which means it's not mixed yet. The katani hasam over there, it says hazos, the actual mitzvah performance of sprinkling or kadesh. So when it comes to the actual lahazos or kadesh, it uses those languages that you can't charge money for. However, it's talking about it's b'mei chatas b'efer par, which means it's not mixed in yet, which means it still needs to be transported, and therefore for that a person is able to be able to receive money for that. Okay, no questions. Hanulach ish mekadesh, hanulach ish mekadesh, hanulach ish mekadesh. We finished the second parak. We're going to start the third parak. Next off, ha'omer l'chavero, you say to your friend, say v'kadesh le'isha plainis, nice guy, v'halach v'kitch la'atzmo, he decides, you know what, she looks kind of nice, I'm going to marry her myself, v'kadeshes l'sheni, he will be the one who is married, and this we'll discuss, of course, at further length. We'll start this again in tomorrow's daf. Adkan.